Most granola is marketed as healthy breakfast, but often, mostly, they're made with oats, oil, and added sugar with surprisingly little amount of protein. Today I'm going to show you how I make naturally high protein banana granola without any added protein powder. I use fresh milled oat, chickpeas, hemp hearts, nuts, seeds, sourdough discard, and bananas to make this banana bread granola that is packed with nutrition from whole ingredients. And at the end, I'm adding some date-sweetened chocolate chips and juice-sweetened cranberries to add a little burst of sweetness. Hi, I'm Dr. Priyal Desai, a physician and culinary medicine specialist. And I love finding ways to bring whole grains, plant protein, nuts, seeds into the foods we already enjoy. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with this granola. I wanted banana bread flavor with lots of texture and more protein. And particularly, I wanted that protein to come from real ingredients without using any protein powder. Now, homemade doesn't automatically mean it's healthier, and there are some great store-bought granolas out there. But making it myself really let me decide what goes in it in terms of whole grains, nuts, seeds, the amount of sweetness, and the flavor that me and my family enjoy. And because I maintain a sourdough starter, it also gives me another way to use my sourdough discard. So you all must be thinking, if there is no protein powder, where is all that protein coming from? So protein comes from freshly milled chickpea flour, walnuts, almonds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, hemp hearts, and oats. Together, the entire batch contains about 165 to 170 grams of protein before adding the chocolate and cranberries, depending on the exact ingredients you use. But obviously, we're not eating the entire tray. Stay till the end and I'll show you how I turn a serving into the breakfast with approximately 25 to 30 grams of protein or more. The rolled oats here gives us that familiar granola texture, while the freshly milled oat flour can act as a binder that brings everything together into these clusters. And because I'm milling the whole oat groat, I am using the whole grain, the entire grain, including the germ layer, the endosperm, and outer fiber-rich bran layer. Now for an ingredient you might not expect to find in banana bread granola, chickpeas. I am milling dried chickpeas into fresh chickpea flour. Chickpeas provide plant protein, fiber, and gives me another way to increase the nutritional density of the recipe without just simply using protein powder. And no, the finished granola does not taste like chickpeas. Next, I'm using almonds and walnuts, pumpkin and sunflower seeds, and one of my favorite ingredients here, hemp hearts. Hemp hearts are particularly protein dense for a seed, which makes them useful when I'm trying to add more plant protein using whole food ingredients. I'm reserving some of the hemp hearts whole, and I'm going to pulse the rest with my nuts and seeds. And don't over-process this. I don't want nut flour. I want little pieces of nuts and seeds to remain visible so we get plenty of texture in the finished granola. And one of the secret tips for having even extra flavor with the granola is toasting the walnuts and the almonds before grinding it into this mixture. Toast it in the oven, let it cool down, and then you add that along with the other nuts and seeds into the food processor, and that brings out an amazing flavor. So here I am using ground flax seeds instead of using the whole flax seeds because grinding the flax makes its nutrients more accessible, and flax gives us fiber and plant-based ALA omega-3 fatty acids. It also works nicely as a binder that holds all the clusters together. Now let's make this taste exactly like banana bread. I'm using plenty of cinnamon along with cardamom, nutmeg, and just a touch of ginger. I increased the cinnamon while tasting the recipe because my first version was a little too subtle. And of course, banana bread granola needs bananas. And the tip here is to use very ripe bananas, the ones with those dark brown or little blackish spots on them, because they give an amazing banana flavor. They give us a sweeter, more developed banana flavor. The bananas contributes some natural sweetness, and I am adding some maple syrup. I actually increased the maple syrup during the recipe tasting, but my first version actually was simply too subtle. And this is something that's important to me in culinary medicine because nutrition matters, but flavor matters too. This isn't intended to be an extremely sweet granola. It's lightly sweet with the banana and maple syrup, creating our base. And later, we're going to layer in a little more sweetness with our chocolate and cranberries. Next is sourdough discard. If you maintain a starter, you know how quickly discard can accumulate. And let me tell you one thing, I tend to feed my sourdough starter extra so I can have some leftover discard to use into varieties of recipes. I use it for crepes, waffles, cookies, granola, making naan, and so much more. And I love how it adds that a little extra texture and flavor. So I tend to knowingly keep some extra for me. So in this particular recipe, the sourdough starter contributes to the flavor and the moisture. And of course, it's another practical way to use the starter. I added some almond butter for richness and also to help combine all those clusters together. And then vanilla. I increased the vanilla during the testing as well. Banana, vanilla, cinnamon, and these warm spices work beautifully together. And vanilla also enhances our perception of sweetness without adding more sugar or maple syrup. So that's the extra benefit. So I combined all the ingredients together and then I let the mixture sit for some time, and that allowed all that fresh meal, oats and chickpea to absorb some of that moisture and come together as a mixture, which was easy to press in my hands, and that was the right consistency that I was looking for. So yes, I mixed everything well together and then let the mixture rest, and then after some time when it all came together, that's when when I squeezed it, it held together, and then I knew that it was ready to go. So then I spread everything out onto a parchment lined baking sheet. And then, I wanted the nice big clusters. So I, just packed everything together. So if you don't want loose granola, you want to make sure that it's all pressed down together. So I was just creating basically one large granola slab. So then I put the whole tray into oven, which was at 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I let it bake for about 40 to 45 minutes. After the first bake, I get it out of the oven and let it sit in the tray for 10 to 15 minutes so it cools down a little bit. And after that, I break the slab into the clusters, and then I spread it out onto a larger tray. So I just break the slab into whatever size clusters I want. Because we are using fresh bananas and sourdough discard, this recipe contains quite a bit of moisture. So I give these clusters a second bake at a lower temperature, about 275 degrees Fahrenheit, for another 10 to 15 minutes. And that really helps dry the clusters further while allowing me to keep all that banana in the recipe. So here's something interesting I noticed during the recipe tasting. So when I used a darker pan to bake my clusters the second time, I noticed that the clusters came out firmer and more crisp than the batch that I had baked on the lighter pan. So the dark pans absorb more heat and can brown the food faster. So baking time may vary depending on your pan. So you want to make sure that you watch the granola closely rather than relying only on the clock. So finally, my granola looked crisp and golden brown and ready, and I let them cool down on the tray. And after that came my favorite part. I am using just date chocolate chips, which are sweetened with dates, no sugar. And I used, along with that, I used the juice-sweetened cranberries, the dried one. And I chose this very intentionally. The granola base itself is lightly sweet rather than dessert sweet. So instead of making every single bite very sweet, these gives you a little concentrated pops of chocolate and tart sweet cranberry throughout the granola. And honestly, this is my favorite bite when I get the granola, chocolate, and cranberry together. So that's the balance I was looking for. So is homemade granola automatically better than everything at the grocery store? Of course not. There are some excellent store-bought options. What making it myself gives me is control over how I build the recipe. We've got whole grains from oats, plant protein and fiber from chickpeas, protein and unsaturated fats from hemp hearts, nuts, and seeds. Ground flax provide us fiber and ALA omega-3 fatty acids. Real banana, maple syrup for some added sweetness, and then date-sweetened chocolate and juice-sweetened cranberries, providing those little bursts of sweetness throughout. So instead of trying to make the entire granola extremely sweet, I'm building sweetness and flavor in different ways throughout the recipe. And we're getting all of these protein without adding any protein powder. So now let's come back to protein. Based on my ingredients and approximate yield, half a cup of this granola provides around 7 grams of protein. So that is an estimate because exact nutrition will vary depending on your ingredients and how much granola your final batch yields. And I want to be transparent about that number. So 7 grams isn't complete high protein breakfast by itself. The magic happens when we think about the whole meal. So you can build the high protein breakfast by adding some cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, or a high protein soy yogurt. And of course, you feel free to add some fresh fruits for added natural sweetness, fiber, and additional nutrients, antioxidants. And then you add about half a cup of this banana bread granola. So depending on the base and the portions you use, we have now created a breakfast with approximately 25 to 30 grams of protein or more. So we can combine the food strategically and let the whole meal do the work. And that's really what the culinary medicine looks like in my kitchen. It's not about making every recipe perfect. It's not about eliminating every bit of sugar. And it's not about labeling individual foods as simply good or bad. It's about using nutrition science alongside cooking to create food that is practical, nourishing, and enjoyable. So in this recipe, that means whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, and some dried fruit. And yes, chocolate too. So if you enjoy fresh meal baking, sourdough, and practical culinary medicine recipes like this, I love to have you subscribe. And tell me in the comment, what would you like to add to your granola base? Here I added the date-sweetened chocolate chips and the juice-sweetened cranberries, but there are so many other options. You can add the dried blueberries, which are, of course, they're usually sweetened with sugar, but you can add raisin, which is natural. There's no sugar added. You can use dates, which are naturally sweet. Figs are pretty sweet without any added sugar, and you can add some coconut flakes. There's so many options out there, which whatever flavor that you enjoy, you can build your own granola your way. And I would love for you to tell me how you build your granola, and I would be happy to see all your different flavor and texture combinations. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.